Open Parliament every weekday on Family Love 99.9 FM, Omahia. Open Parliament, when the issues are burning.
When I told you that the man is confused, the man doesn't know a direction. He failed because he was unprepared. You cannot get something from nothing. So they are just trying to find somebody to blame for the failure. So they failed and failed mostly.
It's a beautiful Wednesday, the 28th of February 2024. Good morning. Welcome to the midweek edition of Open Parliament live on the frequency, where we bring you some of the biggest stories in Nigeria, Abia, and beyond. My name is Mr. C. Well, some of the big stories are buzzing this morning. First off, at the National, where the Nigerian Labour Congress on Tuesday night suspended its two-day nationwide protest. I recall that the NLC had declared a two-day nationwide mass protest for February 27th and 28th over the economic hardship confronting Nigerians, this since the removal of petrol subsidy in May 2023. And staying with the National, 12 years after it received the Stephen Orosanye report, the federal government on Monday approved the implementation of its recommendations to reduce the cost of governance. And a little away from the National, right here in Abia State, where President Bola Tinubu on Monday launched the geometric power plant in the commercial nerve center of our state, Aba. This is 20 years after the project was initiated by a former Minister of Power, Professor Bath Naji. Meanwhile, the Abia State government has insisted that, contrary to insinuations in some quarters, the state did not at any time invest in the geometric power project. This and more we'll be talking about on the program this morning. A guest, regular but very distinguished, is a fellow of ethical leadership from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, a recipient of Zix Award on Innovation and Creativity, a pioneer inductee, National Integrity Hall of Fame, a fellow of Chartered Institute of Forensics and Fraud Investigators of Nigeria, Interpol Systems Consultant and Security Expert, Sir Chikwe Udensi. He joins us virtual this morning. Good morning, sir. Welcome to Open Parliament.
Good morning, Mr. C. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you. Well, quite a number of stories, as you might expect, making the rounds as far as Nigeria and Abia are concerned. Well, we'll start first off with the National, where we'll be looking at labor matters. The Nigerian Labour Congress suspending its two-day nationwide protest, as revealed by the president of the NLC, Joe Ajero. Now, the president, he led protesters on a march yesterday in Abuja, as same was replicated across states of the Federation, with some governors, interestingly, taking part. And in a communique at the end of its National Executive Council meeting yesterday, the The NLC is said to have suspended the 2-day protest, saying the objectives of the protest were achieved on the first day of the protests. What do you make of what happened across the states of the Federation, protesting the talk about some of the policies of the federal government, top of it, the removal of petrol subsidy, floating of the Nigerian currency as well?
Thank you very much, Mr. C. Very troubling times for the country.
Absolutely.
And if you ask me, too much of demonstrations, too much of disagreements, too much of reneging on agreements. This demonstration we had the last time has been described as demonstration in democracy. Why was it done that way, Mr. C? So many people were very impressed with the way the demonstration went. Look at what happened in Lagos. The police were distributing cold water and some mineral drinks to demonstrators. The police, they were not fighting them, they were not barricading them, they were distributing water to them and ensuring there was peace in the procession. Look at also what happened in Oyo State. The governor of Oyo, Seyi Makinde, he took part in the demonstration. He led the demonstration. So it was a government labor thing in that process. And also in Bayelsa, the governor of Bayelsa. Mr. C, one other interesting thing is what happened at the National Assembly. For the first time, the gates of the National Assembly was completely open. But do we really need these demonstrations, Mr. C? Do we really need these strikes in a common economy that is very deprived, in a common economy that requires revitalization? It's a problem, Mr. C. And also very interesting is the fact that TUC, the Trade Union Congress, and also surprisingly, the National Association of Nigerian Students, they didn't take part in this demonstration. They cited lack of genuine reasons to take part. Mr. C, it's always very important. It's always very, very important that we, in having agreements, we have suggested this over and over. When government is having agreements with labor, there must be a joint implementation committee of both labor and government to implement it, so that nobody is held accountable or held liable to have breached any of the agreements. If they had taken this advice, why wouldn't have been where we are today? The idea that we had the agreement of October 2nd, where 16 points agreements were reached, 16 issues were canvassed, and agreements were reached on them. Why do we now have problems in implementing these agreements? We have also found that, Mr. C, that most of the 16 points agreements, most of them have been met by government. There were another 17 points, extra 17 points that they are looking at now.
Oh yes, that was the points presented yesterday by the NLC president.
Yes, this part of some of them were not part of the 16-point agreement, but these ones are very germane. The land borders, they are asking that now that it is very clear that both Dangote and Bua are really dealing with the country, where you have a bag of cement selling between 12 to 15,000 naira in Nigeria, the same Dangote cement is selling in the Niger Republic for 3,000 to 4,000 naira. If this cement is being produced in Nigeria, why is this selling higher in Nigeria than when it is being sent across borders with all the tariffs, custom tariffs that has to do with the borders? Why is this selling 4,000 in Niger Republic and then in Cotonou, and also in neighboring Ghana. The same Dangote cement. That is what the concerns are. And they're saying, open the borders. Let us also have other countries' cement coming into our own country. That will have enormous competition basis. And also, the idea that our farms are still not secured, it makes farming difficult. And it makes food scarcity becoming a major problem. And also, I was really surprised. I was shocked and surprised to find out that government is charging extra levies, charging extra fees, charging more at the toll gates. You can imagine what is happening with the customs and exercise. Customs have increased their prices. It doesn't happen in a deprived economy. In a deprived economy, you give concessions and inject more money into the system. I was equally shocked and surprised to find out the government was thinking about mopping up what they called excess liquidity of currency. Which excess? We don't even have enough. How come we have excess there? There is no excess, Mr. C. And we are wondering why government is taking these steps. Incrementing school fees. How can you increase school fees at a time when the people are suffering? When there's enormous problem, you increase even import duties on medicals, drugs and medicine, they have increased it. And then they have not paid outstanding wages as they promised. Government promised that they were going to put pressure on state governments and also local governments to pay outstanding wages. And they were understanding that those who are earning less than 100,000 naira every month should be exempt from taxes. You do not take away from the people in a very tight and distorted economy like this. When the people are suffering, the duty of government is to inject more money into the system, charge less of taxes, and make sure that the people benefit from the governance of injecting more money into the system. We're quite surprised that Nigerian-made goods are not being patronized, and that is one of the things they're asking for. There's another area we should look into, which has destroyed so many economies, especially developing economies. The advice from IMF, International Monetary Fund, the advice from World Bank. Mr. C, countries that have taken advices from these two organizations have found themselves emasculated. They have found themselves in trouble financially. Ordinarily, International Monetary Fund should be bringing ideas that will increase the parameters, the economic parameters of developing countries. But that's not what we see. Any country in the world that have taken the advice of International Monetary Fund and World Bank have always been in trouble. Lastly, one of the areas I was very interested in, which I have contributed massively, especially through our various communication channels with government, is this issue of minimum wage. Why does it have to take us this length of time to have minimum wage implemented? What is in it? Minimum wage can be implemented within 1 week, Mr. Why do we have to take months, sometimes years, to implement something that ordinarily we can do in 1 week? That minimum wage issue becomes a major issue, becomes a major problem. We don't have to wait this number of months for us to implement it. People are suffering, people are in penury, people are dying needlessly, and we need a government that is very sensitive to the plight of the people.
Yeah, but interesting issues, the 17 points that presented by the NLC yesterday, some of which you have touched. But, would you touch further on this other recommendations? One that said to direct all state government to immediately pay all owed wages, wage awards, allowances, gratuities, and pensions. Now, that's one. And they talk about direct the purchase and use of made in Nigeria goods and services to stimulate local production and safe jobs. I mean, on the first, how much of an influence would the federal government have on state governments to be able to go as far as directing the payment of what was mentioned?
Well, we must have to look at it from a very honest point of view. We must have to be very honest about it. And the honest truth, I must say very clearly, is that the state governments are not playing the role they ought to play. We have seen the enormous contributions by way of palliatives by federal government. We have always seen also the enormous contributions in terms of cash payment to state governments in the area of infrastructure and also salaries and palliatives. State governments have not shown any difference in what it was before they received these monies. The fact remains that only about 14 out of 36 states have implemented the minimum wage. We're talking about only 30,000 naira a month as minimum wage. They have not implemented it. I must tell you very honestly that almost all the states, except for 2 or 3 that have made sizable effort to clear the backlog of pensions and gratuities and outstanding wages, almost all states are owing backlog of salaries, backlog of pensions, backlog of gratuities. Almost all states. We are told by the federal government that a whopping 30 billion was granted in this regard. And we also know that the allocations from the federal government, from FAC distribution, Federal Account Allocation Committee, have amounted to 3 times what it used to be. 3 times what it used to be. Rather than invest this money in the area of the welfare of the people, do you know what we have realized? Do you know what we have realized? Very shockingly,
go ahead.
We have realized that almost 60% of these extra allocations that have come to states have ended up in the changes for the purchase of foreign exchange. That is what we have realized. Over 60% of these extra allocations that have gone to state governments for the welfare of the people have ended up in breed changes. That is what has put enormous pressure. Part of the thing that has put enormous pressure on the naira. That is what we're saying. If we don't get these things right, if the governors does not work straight and very coherently with the federal government in ensuring that the sufferings of the people are sizably reduced, it is going to continue, Mr. C. The problem will continue.
Yeah, another issue before we move on to the other story of the federal government and its bid to implement the Stephen Orosenye's report. I mean, part of the 17 points presented yesterday by NLC is the immediate reduction in the cost of governance in Nigeria at all levels to reflect the nation's tight fiscal position. The willpower does the federal government have to follow through with this, not just at the state of the federation, you think?
Yes, I have got through the Rasanya report and also the directive of Mr. President that it should be implemented and implemented immediately. We are told that the committee that was set up by Mr. President have already commenced action. They have already commenced action. And let me also commend this government of Tinubu. I have commended them in several areas, though I have also disagreed with them in a few areas. But in this area of this Orasanya's report, reduction of the agencies, the reduction of the cost of governance is very important, extremely very important. What we have achieved here in the Orasanya's report is that about 52 agencies will be merged. There will be merger of 52 agencies. There's a reduction from 29 agencies to 15. There is an outright scrapping of about 38 agencies, if I remember very clearly. 38 agencies are to be scrapped completely. In all, the total package there is that out of the 263 agencies that don't forget that more agencies have been created since after this report. But as at the time of the report, about 263 agencies, they will be reduced to 161. 161. And then about 14 agencies will be downgraded to ministry, departments in the ministries. There are other two things that interested me so much in that report. The audit of these agencies. Most of these agencies from the lifetime have never been audited. No audit whatsoever. And they singled out about 89 agencies. And also one thing that interests me so much about those recommendations is the funding of professional councils, engineering council, nurses and midwifery council, all those councils, dental council, all those councils, Mr. C. All these councils, government will stop funding them. But there are a few areas I disagreed with, and I have also made this disagreement very open. I had an interview on AIT 3 days ago, and I made it very clear. And I've also sent a copy of my position to the implementing governmental agencies. The EFCC, ICPC, and Code of Conduct Bureau. I disagreed, they are merger. We have enormous fraud in the system. We have enormous financial crime in the system that even these agencies are not even able to cope. What we should be thinking about is having one of these agencies. Economic and financial crime are dealing essentially on economic crime. The independent corrupt practices are dealing specifically with corrupt practices in the system. It is different also from the job of Code of Conduct. What we should be looking at is expanding their activities and, if possible, creating more agencies to make sure that these billions and these trillions we are hearing every day that have been embezzled by government agencies, especially those that have been given immunity. We have a dangerous situation. I don't know who made those laws. I don't know how those laws were arrived at. That somebody who is governing the people at presidential level and at state level will be immune to all kinds of prosecution, both civil and criminal. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world, except in Nigeria. So we must have to increase this number of regulatory agency, probing agency, economic crime agency. We need more of it. Another area that I disagree with.
So, in essence, you do not support the merger of these anti-graft agencies?
I support it. We need more of them because they are the most crime.
Aren't you looking at duplication of functions?
No, not duplication of functions. The activities are much. The occurrences are too many. So we're not duplicating functions. Their functions are separate. For example, like I tried to explain earlier, economic crime, economic and financial crime. It is different from in ICPC's role. It is totally different. It is also different from the role of Code of Conduct. They are totally different roles they are playing. What we need to do, like it is being done around the world, look at other clients of the world, Mr. C. They are expanding and increasing the number of querying agencies. These are agencies that query the activities of those in public service. Because look at what our people are doing. Those who are given any small job to do for the people, the tendency is that those funds that are available for the benefit of the people are being misappropriated.
But what do you make, sir? I mean, of the timing of this, the government coming through with talk about implementing this report? Are you fine with the timing?
Well, any time is a good time. We would have preferred that it was done all these years. We have always criticized the government of Jonathan. Rasanya's report came and ought to have been implemented during his time. but he left it unimplemented. And unfortunately, too, the government of Buhari, in its incompetencies, was not able to do anything. It is this government that decided to look into the report and find ways to implement this report. We must have to implement them. There is too much wastages in the area of governance. If you recall what I said the last time in open parliament, there's so much wastage. I have also mentioned that apart from this process, the government of local and states should reduce the excesses in their local and state government areas. The excesses is too much. We must have to reduce them.
Well, as much as some Nigerians might want to agree that, hey, I mean, it's due that we get to reduce the cost of governance. There have been a lot of advocacy for that. But yesterday on Open Parliament, we did have a seasoned journalist in Chikwe Ojo, and he raised some very pertinent questions when we did talk about the said implementation of this report. The issue that has to do with the 2024 budget, the fact that the budget has been passed already and funds allocated to some of these agencies that said to be scrapped and maybe matched. And then he raised the issue of the fact that some of these agencies, the establishment as a result of act of parliament, aren't we going to run into some kind of administrative chaos? So maybe act in breach of some of this act if we go ahead with the implementation, you think?
No, I don't think so. In fact, government has promised that there will not be any loss of job for the employees in these ministries, agencies, and parastatals. Government have promised that all they are doing is harmonizing the activities for the better operational. When these agencies are being established by law, Mr. C, it does not say that these agencies cannot be streamlined into a more operative and operational form. It doesn't say that. What government is doing here is not to scrap their functions, no. It's not to turn them into extinction, no. What they're saying, where it is necessary, where functions are overlapping, what we need to do is to merge them. Don't also forget that the membership of these committees are those who ought to know better. The Attorney General of the Federation is there, the head of service is there, Secretary to Government of the Federation is there. These are people who know exactly the processes and ways to effectively implement them. There are areas we said no, that you don't have to touch these areas. One of the recommendations is the scrapping of the National Board on Technical Education. We have written there, said no, we don't need more of degrees. What we need these days are skills. The Board of Technical Education specifies its processes on skill acquisition. And that's exactly what we need. You can think about other areas, but this area of where the needs are, we must have to look in that direction. The world today is all about skills. Skills are leading the world. Skills are ruling the world. So we don't have to de-emphasize the areas where the world requires. There's another area which we disagreed, Mr. C. We disagreed also on the National Senior Secondary School Education Commission. You remember that the system guarantees what is called the 6334 6 years in primary school, 3 years in junior secondary school, and then 3 years in senior secondary school, and then 4 years in university, depending on the course you are studying. The emphasis there is the 3 years in senior secondary school. That's 3 years in senior secondary school. By the time you're leaving, graduating from SSS, senior secondary school, you must have a trade. You must have a skill. You must have a profession. It can be a barber. It can be a tailor, which they call fashion designer today. It can be anything, any of the professions. So that when you want to go into the university and you are not able to, you can have a trade. You can have a skill. That is what is ruling the world today, skills. and trade and profession. That is what the world wants. So scrapping that agency, that national agency that superintends and ensures that skills and professional positions are acquired before you leave secondary school, scrapping that agency is not what we ought to do right now. And we have put our position very clear that yes, we have to reduce these numerous agencies, remove those ones that are not very relevant, reduce the cost of governance. There are some areas we must have to ensure that we enhance, make sure they work and work more efficiently.
All right. Open Parliament, the midweek edition, Interpol Systems consultant and security expert, a guest on the program, talking national issues. Well, we'll be taking a break here. When we return, we'll be touching home, where the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, on Monday launched the geometric power plant in the commercial nerve center of our state, Aba, now 20 years after the project was initiated by a former Minister of Power, Professor Bath Naji. Stay with us. We'll be back. Well, it's still Open Parliament and it's live on the frequency with a guest, Interpol Systems consultant and security expert, Chikwe Udensi. Shortly, we would be going to the phone lines for your reaction on what we have been talking about. Well, let's do Abia State now, where the President, Bola Tinubu, on Monday launched the geometric power plant in Aba, 20 years after the project was initiated by a former Minister of Power, Professor Bath Naji. Well, Aba was agog. I'm sure you were keeping tabs from wherever it is you are, and how excited Abians were to see that project 20 years coming to fruition with the commissioning on Monday. How did this greet you?
Yes, it greeted me with some level of excitement. I recall that in 2014 and again in 2015, I visited the geometric power plant in Osisioma. I visited it in the course of my campaign to be the governor of Abia State. If I had called Professor Bath Naji to inform him of my visit to the facilities, I was very stunned that such a level of investment and the importance it connotes to a place like Aba, Commercial Nerve Center, was being neglected. I felt so sad. But let me congratulate Bath Naji, congratulate Aba, congratulate Abians, and also congratulate the governor of Abia State and government of Abia State that finally this power plant has commenced production of electricity. I've also followed the back and forth claims and lack of claims. I've also followed the speeches of those who were in government before and also those who are currently in government about their contributions to ensuring that the power plant was in production. Mr. C, we have, somebody was saying the other day, that was earlier yesterday, that we have a lack of money in the system, lack of naira and lack of dollar. We have lack of electricity. We have lack of water. We have lack of food. But more importantly, we have lack of truth. There's less truth in the system. Those who ought to be statesmen in our system are not being statesmen. They are politicians. You can be a political statesman. You don't have to play politics with everything. The span of over 20 years for the actualization of the geometric plant spanned over 3 governments. So each of these governments should take credit. What we should be looking at now is the benefits that come with that functionality of geometric power plants. Not necessarily casting aspersions, using derogatories, and then using these political languages that don't benefit anybody. If you look critically to the process of the geometric process, land was allocated. A government allocated that land. Even if it was not government that allocated that land, the process of acquiring that land was supposed to be a state government's affair. When I went there, I saw the road construction, though it was not completed, but I saw that the road was expanded. It was an expansive road. It was a government that was doing that. So over 20 years, we have had 3 governments. And those 3 governments, now the 4th one, they may have at one time or the other contributed. My only concern, let's say, was the problem of the back and forth on the $5 million, which was supposed to be 5% of the equity of the plant. There was lack of transparency in that transaction. Otherwise, was it cash that was paid? Was it not transferred into accounts? If it was transferred into accounts, or if it was done properly through budgetary provisions, which is what the law provides for, we wouldn't be where we are today. Those who have heard speak on it talked about State Executive Council approval. Yes, State Executive Council can approve, but it ought to have been budgeted for. It ought to have gone through a budgetary process, and evidence of payment would have been there. Today, we wouldn't have had this process of, yes, we paid, yes, we did not pay, we may have paid, we may have not paid part of it. That is not necessary, Mr. C. And I listened very carefully to the interview of Professor Naji. I listened very carefully. I wanted to hear specifics. Professor Naji did not say that government did not pay that money. I heard him what he said. He said that government did not meet the promise of paying the money. Was any part payment made at all as claimed by government? If part payment was made, what process was it? One other thing I heard him say, I did not receive any dollar from anybody. Government should not be paying you through dollars. Was any money paid to you at all? Even if it was through CD or through SEFA, was any money paid? We should be very clear in this area, because I didn't see much of what he said in terms of no specific payment was made to me by government. The government was claiming that they paid part of the money. In fact, a whopping 1.2 or 1.3.
1.4 billion.
1.4 billion. It's a whopping amount.
And that's supposed to be a part of the 5%, $5 million.
Yes, he did not say specifically, I did not receive this money. No part of the money was paid to me. What he said, that government did not meet their agreement. They didn't meet their promise. Not meeting promise could mean not paying the $5 billion in full. Let back tell us specifically, was this money any part at all received? And let also government tell us where they paid this money to. It's not a secret arrangement. Payment of such money, we're talking about 1.4 billion, must go through a commercial process, a commercial transaction. It's a commercial bank that must have to handle that. Which bank handled it? So I'm concerned more with transparency. Mr. C, if you recall, I've always criticized not this government, not the previous government. From 1999, I have consistently and continuously criticized the process of hiding government activities in secrecy. It does not happen anywhere in the world.
But let me
have transparency.
Yes,
in all their transactions.
I'd like for you to react to this before we get to the phone lines. I mean, some of the spokespersons to the current administration, the special advisor to the governor on media and publicity, Mr. Ferdinand Ikoma, he said, I mean, the transition committee, which was set up to, for a smooth transition to this government, does not have documents that shows such a transaction was made at its disposal. Is it shocking? And if that's the case, what would you advise going forward?
I have always advised, not just the previous government not being transparent. Even this government have not shown enough transparency. You will recall that I have made this issue very clear. This government have started very well. It has started very well by doing the bidding of the people, creating infrastructural activity. But when it comes to transparency, you do not award any contract by mere pronunciation, by mere announcement. The award of contract takes a process. And that process is a transparency process, which we have already begged the society, let us do. Not only this government, from 1999, Audio Carlos government, to TA's government, to Dr. Bazo's government, up to this government. There is lack of transparency. Let me give you an example of what I mean. We had a situation where the opposition raised an issue that this government is spending 1.5 billion to buy 2 vehicles. The government came and said, oh no, sorry, that was a mistake. It was a typographical error. At what point did the typographical error start? If there was extreme and absolute transparency, at the point of the document going to the State Assembly for scrutiny, it would have been made open. The State Assembly allocating it to the committee that was responsible to do the basics before plenary ought to have found it out. But it passed through the ministry, to the state government, to the State Assembly, came back, approved and signed into law.
Well, as a matter of fact, the governor did say it was the Excel application that was faulty at some point, not necessarily a typographical error. I don't know if that changes your view.
Okay, if it was the Excel issue, look at the calculation there, do the math, then remove the excess and see if it tallies with the budget total number. It does not tally. If it does not tally, then you find out that it came from day one. If you are suggesting that it was at one stage of the calculation that it happened, then what you are saying that there must have been the process that culminated into that amount. But what we have found out from our investigation, Mr. C, is very simple. This started from government, ended in the State Assembly. State Assembly did not identify it. They rubber stamped it and sent it back. It was signed into law, which ought not to be. If there was effective transparency and scrutiny of government activities, it would not have happened. It won't have happened.
Would you fault the current administration? I mean, with the issue of the geometric and talk about 5% equity on that project by the government. Would you fault this current administration of any form of lack of transparency when they are saying, hey, come on, I mean, the transition committee set up, we're supposed to have these documents, but we don't have it at our disposal, so we cannot say the state has an equity?
Well, if you ask me very specifically, one cannot, in good judgment, fault this government on its role in ensuring that geometric power plants came into fruition. One cannot say that. In fact, one should be commended the government for the effort they have made in making sure that it became a reality. But that's not where I'm coming from, Mr. C. I'm talking about the overall transparency of governance from 1999 to today. Let us look at the area of transparency. If we lack in transparency, you create suspicion. And if you create suspicion, that is where these arguments, that is where these allegations, whether true or false, that is where they come from. Where there is lack of transparency, you create suspicion. That suspicion creates allegations. And we can avoid it by being transparent. I'm not saying that this government have not done well in the area of the power plants. No, I'm saying I commend them. I commend the effort. But I also commend the effort of the previous governments. Because if that land was not provided, if for some reason one of those governments have revoke the land on which geometric power plant was situated, well, we will not be talking about geometric today. So we should commend all these governments and look for ways of ensuring transparency in our operations.
Okay, so quickly, sir, before we do the phone lines, what would you advise? Where do we go from here? Now that, I mean, the previous administration is saying, hey, we paid such amount of money. The current administration is saying, hey, we didn't see any of such documents. And if the comments by spokespersons of the previous administrations are anything to go by, we're talking about the common patrimony of Abians. Every Abian, I mean, they have a stake in that project, going by the comments. But this administration is saying, hey, we don't see anything like that. What would you advise going forward?
Are we talking about Bitcoin? Are we talking about cryptocurrency? We're not talking about cryptocurrency. We're talking about regular transfers of money from one account to another. The records ought to be there. If the records are not there, then the government did not do it. So what we should look at is the records. But it's very important, Mr. C, we look at the major problems. Don't forget there are serious problems before this geometric will be fully functional. We have not even considered the problem of distribution. We have not even considered the problem of transformers that ought to be working very properly before you can have light. Don't forget that geometric is going to be producing 118 megawatts. Nobody's going to consume the megawatts. We shall be consuming the wattage, and it is usually between 22 to 24 watts. But when it goes to mega wattage, there must be some transformation. We haven't put those infrastructure in place. We still have very old transformers right now. We still have very old and very poor distribution lines. I had mentioned this 2 or 3 years ago, that while we are talking about giving the discos the authority to distribute, look at the distribution lines. Look at the transformers. You can't take this electricity from the one we call interstate. It must have to be the one that has been stepped down, and you can only step it down through transformers. These transformers are not existing right now. We don't have effective and functional transformers, and we don't have effective and functional distribution lines. If you look at some of the electric lines, they are so shattered and marked. And if you look at that marking of those transforming lines, it's a problem. So if we are producing this electricity from geometric, what of distribution, what of transformation, and for consumption? We have not even talked about the meterage, even the metering of the consumption. These are problems that ought to be looked into early enough so that we can have effective and normal electricity supply in Aba and its environs.
We're going to the phone lines now. 0816-111-5955 for 0907-103-6625. That is 0816-111-5955 for 0907-103-6625. 1 minute if you come through. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. T.
Good morning to you.
Good morning, our guest in the field.
Good morning, sir.
I'm Emeka, and I'm calling from Alabama.
Emeka, welcome.
Let me just, I don't want to zero my own contribution on one particular area, the geometrics, because this one concerns me, and it has to do with, I just don't want to delve into the political aspect of who accepted and who did not. I think the state government, the past state government, did their own part. Starting from Holik, I think Holik down to Ochendo and the Baku. The Baku, I must commend the party, the immediate past government. He had one or two things contributed towards this particular lovable project. I must commend those who took what it took. Because with only 8 months in administration, he was able to at least make sure that this is coming to existence. And I must commend too for Professor Batman. In fact, I will equally urge the other parties, the other governors in the party to do something at least to replicate what other states have been able to do concerning geometrics.
All right.
And also see how they can expand it to nature and other commercial cities.
All right, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you. Hello, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. C.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, this is Blue Odumaya.
Welcome. 1 minute.
Yeah, please, I want to ask a little question. Last time in the Open Parliament, our speaker told us that there's some money federal government needs to use to approve a security gadget, which we have gotten. That's $20,000 or something. I want to know whether federal government have given that money to those security agents to get those gadgets.
Well, I'm sure you should know an open parliament will react to the issues we bring on the front burner. Thanks so much for coming through nonetheless. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning to you. Hello, good morning. Do call us back if you can. 0816-111-5955 for 0907-103-6625. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes, there's a statement there, very serious statement that we live here.
What's your name, please? What's your name, please?
My name is Daniel Zawata from Umumokoromwa.
Welcome.
So the problem is we don't take indigenous creativity serious. I am a sponsor personal creativity researcher with over 180 new recruiting beauty media and healthcare projects that works on multiple levels. But I've written I've written a letter to the government. I've done everything to get so many ways to start production here. Since they said they will move their things from consumption to production. But not saying it is doing it because skill is the only thing that is moving every part of the world forward. So I've been looking for a way to see the man with you, to know how I can discuss this thing with him. I produce so many things, there's no way to start in the Abia State.
Right.
If not for the secretary to the state government of River State, and when Tinubu was governor, I would not be where I am today.
Thank you.
So that is what I want to say.
Thank you. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, please. Welcome.
See, that 5% money progress that you will do in the app. Any company, multinational company like Shell, just like what done with the refinery, that will need 5% of his profit share to the whole community.
Okay.
As a kind of their benefit, their contribution of hosting that company in their business. You know, sometimes Nigeria, they look at the people like so money. You know, they pay for property, they go and pay for that. And finally, please, for over 1 minute now, transformer in a campaign version there. About it, no light.
Thank you very much. We appreciate. We are definitely out of time for your reaction, but let's get to our guest for a summation in the program this morning, sir.
Thank you, Mr. C. I'm very, very concerned about the federal government's allegations against the states. They talked about the palliatives, the provisions of grains to the states which never got it to the people. All states, except for 2 states that did not just provide the grains, also added theirs. They talked about the infrastructural grants for infrastructure that never got to the states. Salary arrears amelioration grant, minimum wage enhancement grant. Government has a rich view of monies provided for states that never got there. The question is, what is the problem? Where are these monies? Federal government is saying that the monies and the grants and those commodities have been released to the states. And we're not hearing anything. The people are suffering. The people are in penury. Something has to be done. And done urgently too.
All right. Thank you very much, Sir Chikwe Udensi, for coming through on the program this morning.
Thanks for always having me, Mr. C. I appreciate it.
Interpol Systems consultant and security expert, a guest on the program this morning. Return same time, same station next week, God willing. Thanks for being a part. It returns tomorrow to the Thursday edition. 10 will be time for the news update. My name is Mr. C.